Now, the story to Assassin's Creed actually takes place after the events of Assassin's Creed Revelations in terms of Desmond, in which they find a secret passage which kind of leads to some sort of underground safe. But the actual main story of Assassin's Creed takes place during the American Revolution, in which you play as Connor, who's kind of half colonialist and half Native American, who kind of gets caught up in the whole American Revolutionary War when his village is under threat of being sold or having its people shipped away. And it is caused by a group of 6 individuals, I would like to say, who are working between both the British and the colonialists, and you basically have to go on some sort of adventure in which you have to assassinate these 6 particular targets while affecting certain events, and so actions will then better benefit your current situation of just trying to understand exactly what is going on, how to help the revolutionists win the war, and how to save your village from being destroyed. But to be honest, if you have not played any of the original Assassin's Creed games, I really suggest you do your research, because unless you know what is going on in terms of the world itself, you're really not going to understand certain events that do take place between certain chapters of this particular game. And I will say this is probably my least favorite storyline out of all the Assassin's Creed games. I mean, I've never played the first one, but I've read the story for that one on Wikipedia, and that one is certainly a lot more interesting than the things that happen in here. But on to gameplay. Now, the gameplay to Assassin's Creed 3 is very familiar to the gameplay style of the previous installments of this franchise. However, it's just been smoothened out. Now, the combat is definitely a lot more faster in terms of pulling out better combos and better counterattacks. You still have the ability to chain up your kills. So as soon as you kill one person, you can immediately target another person and kill that person. In terms of traveling around, the maps in the individual cities, which unfortunately for this game only limits you to about Boston and New York City, with 2 frontier zones, which aren't really all that big, in my opinion. But they are definitely very detailed. Instead of having to run around buildings, you now actually have the ability to actually climb through windows, run through buildings in order to lose people who are chasing you. And it actually does follow the actual way the city would have looked during specific times. So, say earlier on in the war, New York is completely infested with redcoats, and if they see you or notice you, they will chase you. But at this particular time, they will send a lot of guys after you. As for somewhere like Boston, we'll definitely have more revolutionaries, which is kind of cool, so I'm glad they kept with the times. But the biggest addition to this game by far, and probably the best thing that this game has going for it, is by far the naval combat, which is a new addition, and I thought was so fantastic it could have been its own game. You now actually have the ability to not only pilot your own ship, you get to control the mast. As for choosing when to close your sails, go to half sails to kind of get a little speed to make better tight turns, or go to full sail in order to catch up to a person. What you'll do is you'll line up your ship and you'll turn the camera to either the left or the right of the ship, and you actually get to choose the type of ammo you want to shoot your opponent's ships down. And there are several different missions, and I hope that they do release a DLC for the naval missions only, because although the actual campaign and the standard storyline is there's a lot to do, I just felt that it was a bit too big. I mean, if you're gonna add all this extra content, I would have preferred them have it there to actually affect the story. But whether you're in the frontier or you're in either New York or Boston, all these extra missions really don't add anything to the story. They're just there just to give you something to do besides the story, which for many people isn't a bad thing. But for someone like me, if I'm going to waste my time doing all this extra stuff, I want it to add up to something, or add some type of extra level to the gameplay or story, and it just didn't do that for me. Okay, now I've seen a lot of reviewers online give this game just absolutely mind-blowing scores, like 8s and 9s. However, this game is heavily flawed. Number one, it is very, very full of bugs and glitches. Several times I ran into situations where my counter button wasn't working, or perhaps the AI was on steroids at one point and somehow 5 enemies turned into 30, in which that would be suicide for anyone to try to turn around and fight. So I ended up doing a lot of running around. Another thing that I didn't like was that the speed travel button only works on specific locations. So if you're doing a little side mission that actually has to have you go to 5 different points, you actually have to either walk or ride to these 5 different locations. You can't speed run, and there is an underground tunnel system, but it's pointless. It's faster to travel above ground than below. It was a pointless level of depth that I think was just a waste of time. Another problem I had with the game is the story's ending. Now, I'm not going to get into the ending, and I'm going to let someone else online get to the ending and explain it better, but the best way I can describe it is I'm guessing someone who wrote the Mass Effect 3 ending somehow assassinated a writer from Ubisoft doing Assassin's Creed 3, snuck in and decided to throw their own little Mass Effect 3 type ending twist into this title, and no one proofread this, and so you get this ending here. But that's all I'm going to say on the ending. Now, Assassin's Creed is in no ways a bad game. It is a good game, it's just a heavily flawed game. I believe that in the developers' attempt to want to make the world bigger, they missed a lot of the little things. And when you miss multiple little things in several different areas, trust me, the problems will build up. And as I explained in my flaws, this game is heavily flawed in both game mechanics, combat, even there's some story elements, especially the ending, which kind of ruined the overall experience of Assassin's Creed 3, which is why I'm going to give Assassin's Creed 3 a 7 out of 10. It's a solid rental if you're not a fan of the franchise. I would say big fans are obviously going to buy it, but if you're someone who wants to actually play this game, then I would suggest you play older games first, then hop into this one and probably rent it. You'll beat this game in about, I'd say, 20 hours at best. If you like this review, please like, comment down below, and subscribe to keep track of me and my future movie reviews and game reviews. And like always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.